Hi guys, welcome back to Music is My Mantra, where we discuss all things music and wellness. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Grammy Week. I have one of my good friends who works at the Grammys. She's the director of education for the nonprofit side of the Grammys, Julie Mutnansky. Shout out, girl, if you're listening to my podcast. Awesome, thank you. Every year I see that, the Grammys through her perspective of this big production. And earlier this week, I was really lucky to get to go to the Grammy Museum, which anyone can go to the Grammy Museum, but this day there was a panel that Julie organized. It was all about music, women in music. If you listen to the earlier episodes, that you'll know that this last year I've been sort of disconnected from that dream that I've thought that I wanted, and pursuing a career in music, it's my feelings have shifted, and I've gone through this different phase of reorganizing my priorities. But obviously it's still very much alive inside of me because I felt so inspired going there and listening to these women speak about how they were all on this panel nominated for a Grammy, my age and younger, and super talented, all with different backgrounds, different ways of getting into the industry. There's the educational side, there's the music cares, which is all about like mental health, physical health for musicians. I got custom earplugs last summer at one event that I went to, and that was all paid for by Music Cares. They have a lot of great programs, like even for artists that might struggle with addiction or alcohol issues, that sort of thing. The Grammys and the Recording Academy means so much more to me than just, the awards and the fancy costumes and that sort of thing. For sure, that's been a dream of mine to get to that space where your music has so much impact on people that, you know, you you have a platform with your songs and your music is affecting people for better or worse. It's just really interesting to sort of watch my thoughts as all of this happens, because I actually feel more connected to the Grammys, more connected to that whole program than ever, because I do have friends that are winning Grammys this year and last year too, honestly. Nicole Zuritis, and this year Nicole and her husband Dan. If you guys listen to this, hey, what's up? It's so awesome. I was at one of Nicole's shows a few months ago, and I was telling her, like, first of all, we met because my old guitar player in New York plays in her band. She gave me voice lessons at one point while I was still living there. She's just really inspirational. I love her energy. She's got really fun social media. She's very down to earth. When I saw her last, she gave me the advice of, music will always be there. And sometimes you just have to take a step back and figure out other things in your life. And it's so true. One thing that most people don't see, unless you're an artist yourself, is the struggle that it can be to have an art where if you're an artist, you don't necessarily get compensated for being an artist. It's very much like you have to put in all the work, and then potentially down the road, it'll come back to you. It's crazy because even today, I feel like I'm living two different lives sometimes. I want stability, and I want to be able to pay my bills and have a nice life. I feel like as I've gotten older, those things are more and more important to me. But I still have this dream to come into work every day, have all of these responsibilities for my clients and the car dealership stuff that I do. I don't think I've mentioned that, but currently I do all the social media and events for three dealerships that my uncle owns. And it's been a really good stabilizing thing for me. This is how I'm able to make this podcast happen. But it's also like when I'm there, I'm not fully able to be myself, because maybe that's all in my head and that's a story that I'm working on changing, right? But it's like when I step into my artistry and my music and like the fun pieces of clothing that I get to wear that's not at work, that's when I feel like myself. That's when I feel like I'm able to like thrive and just come alive. Hey guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're back at my home. The studio had a band playing next door and it was just really loud even with the noise canceling on. So I sort of ran out of there. And so this episode might be a little bit disjointed, but bear with me. I was talking about how it's Grammy week and today is the Grammys. So this is always a really cool moment. Growing up, I remember watching it on the TV. When I turned 30, this is when I had the crazy idea that I wanted to win a Grammy. And that sounds so, to me, that even sounds crazy when I say it because the music industry is a really young industry. And I didn't feel like I was 30 when I turned 30. I felt like I was just starting to get the hang of life because throughout my entire 20s, I was struggling just to survive. And I was working multiple jobs all at the same time. It was 2014 when I gave my first musical performance. When I moved to New York, I was 21 years old. It took me 2 years to get into the rhythm of things. I started singing with bands, like right when I got there. I started dating a musician. I moved into this place called the Rad Pad. I just learned so much about music. Everyone that I lived with was an artist of some kind. We lived over a basement space that we used to throw shows. My roommate Aaron had an entire wall, like our entire living room was just all of his record collection. We used to play his records. He used to play his records every time he'd come home. He came home with a new record. There were tons of these record stores all over Greenpoint where we lived. It really opened my eyes to so much music. Just New York in general. I used to do art installations with my friends for clubs, hotel lobbies. I was totally newly introduced to the world of jazz and then completely separate the underground club scene of music and house music. All of this really informed who I was. I started playing, let's see, that was 2010. I moved there. I remember 2013, I went to Bonnaroo. I had been writing songs for those 3 years in New York, but it was like very much my own, in the privacy of my own space. I had no idea how to get started, even though I was playing with other bands and singing and stuff. I just felt I had no idea what I was doing. So finally, 2014 came around and I had all my girlfriends around me. It was Greenpoint Open Studios and I had my first performance of my own original music. It's crazy to think that it's now been 11 years since I gave my first performance because sometimes I feel like I did when I was just 26, just starting out. Now it's like it's been 6 years since I was like, I'm gonna win a Grammy, and from 2014 to 2018, that was another 4 years of learning guitar and playing with people. And I had a punk band called Always Hard. And I was playing all of the underground clubs that are now shut down in Brooklyn. It's crazy to think how much my life has transformed and how much more confidence I have in myself, how much more knowledge I have. But I still feel, and I have friends that are winning Grammys. It's so amazing. So in some ways, I'm so much closer than ever. In other ways, I feel like I'm just getting started because I remember when I moved here in 2019, I was envisioning my ideal life and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do songwriting sessions with people every single week. I had to get a job to cover my bills. All of my time was going to work. And then COVID happened. Between when I first moved to New York up until now, I've put together 5 different iterations of my band. And I was so reliant on them. Even having this space to record this podcast in, I've been back and forth. Do I need it? I can record it here in my house. At the end of the day, I don't think any of these little decisions matter. But then I also know that all of the little decisions add up to bring us to where we're meant to be and to achieve our goals at the end of the day. This is why I love like bullet journals. I have different apps that I use to track certain things. Seeing my friends win Grammys is like the coolest thing. And it makes me realize that I'm not that far away and neither are you. It's like you just have to put the time in. Like part of the reason why I started this podcast was that I want to be able to show up for myself and prove that I can do this. I want to be interviewing other artists. I want to be interviewing songwriters. Maybe Julie, my friend, will come and talk about her experience with the Grammys. I think that would be really interesting. There's the wellness side of it too. It's like I know that I have the potential and the power to help people through music. So I guess I do have a few exciting updates. What has transpired since I started this podcast just a month ago, things are still in the works, but I got to play sound bowls on a friend's record, which is amazing. That was the first time that I've ever recorded singing bowls with a producer, my friend Mario, who is great. He mixed and mastered my last 2 tracks, Lonely Rider and Satellite. Soon, I'll be hosting a weekly class out in Sherman Oaks. It's going to be called Voice Alchemy. I want it to be sort of a continuation of the things that I spoke about on last week's episode. I really got into the nitty-gritty of the different ways and modalities that come into existence when we are talking about music and wellness. There's music therapy and then there's sound healing. I think that both of the different modalities are really valid. I'm constantly learning more about music and more about the healing side of things. I'm really excited to host that class. It's going to be at this really special new space that's opening up. So more details on that to come. Lastly, I started giving voice lessons again. So this next Thursday, I'm opening up my home to give them here from my piano downstairs. And, even just giving voice lessons is such an empowering place to be in because I get to work one-on-one with students that, want to improve in singing, but there's so much more. When you are taking singing lessons, there's so much more that you get out of just learning how to sing. It's about confidence, it's about storytelling, it's about being more in touch with your body, So I guess like to tie it all back to the Grammys, I see the dresses and I see the awards and I see all of the things that Music Cares does for the community. And I really want to be a part of that community, and I am a part of that community. I was in Grammy U for a whole year where I was a member of the Recording Academy, but there's different levels. The next step would be for me to apply to become a full-time voting member of the Academy. I've been so afraid to do this, you guys. I haven't even really admitted it to myself because I've just been putting it off and putting it off, but I've been so intimidated by the idea of spending all of this time and energy to like network and promote myself when naturally there's been so many times where I'm playing a show and then it happens to be all Grammy people. Like this has happened multiple times when I'm booking shows in January since I moved here. Even just going to see Nicole perform or different friends that I've made now that are winning Grammys, it's like I get to meet more and more of the Recording Academy community. So all of this is say that I guess just, saying it out loud I think that there's power in it in that itself. My goal this year is to get my shit together and just do it. It's a lot of self-promotion. You'd think that because my day job is marketing that I'd be really good at promoting myself, but it's hard. And now I have people that are helping me to make this content. So let's go. Let's get the word out there. I'm so excited to light up this podcast, to start having guests on, to continue to explore music and wellness and tell my story. And these songwriters really made me feel like I had to just keep going and that it's easy to make things happen when you show up. At the very beginning of my time here in LA, I made the most of what I had, but I also had this old car and it was probably the coolest car that I've ever owned or that I've been responsible for as long as I had it. But I had this old Buick Skylark, and if you don't know what that is, it's this boat. It's this red convertible from the 1970s. I used to drive this as my daily driver for 8 months. At first, I was just super stoked, and I was driving it everywhere. And then, I had one too many instances where the car just broke down, like the engine would overheat and it would stop when it was in stop and go traffic. It just needed some modern parts and stuff. It really scared me to make the extra effort to just go attend these events and try to meet with people and put myself out there. I can't blame the car, but looking back, I think it really did put a damper on things. I had a moment where I was driving home from Hollywood one night after I wasn't performing that night. I was just going to see friends and support people in the music scene. Have you ever driven downtown, like the 10, like all of the freeways downtown, it gets really congested and confusing. And if you don't get over far enough, you have to switch over like 3 different lanes as there's all this traffic. Then you miss the main freeway and you get pulled off the road into this off ramp. This is what happened to me as I'm driving this old car. I just remember thinking, oh shoot, I missed it. But then I saw like another on ramp. So I'm like, oh great. And I start speeding up. Well, I didn't know that there were multiple on ramps coming in from my left-hand side. Normally, you're just only coming in to merge on the main freeway. Anyway, it's a crazy setup down there. This giant SUV pulled out in front of me and I panicked. In this convertible from the 70s, you don't have like your anti-lock brakes that you do today. You're supposed to pump them to slowly slow down. And I forgot. I slammed on the brakes. It all happened so quickly. But immediately I started to spin out and I just like lost control. So in that moment, I'm thinking, I'm gonna die. I'm spinning literally out of control and I'm gonna die. And this is the end. An on-ramp coming onto the freeway. It's literally, there's a cliff that's just held up by a long tube of cement. The car just spun out, did a whole 180, crashed into the barrier, and my passenger side tire was just suspended in midair. I mean, thank God that the car was so heavy because it literally spun out, started to go over, and I just like surrendered, and then I felt a thump. I was like, wow, okay, I thought I was gonna legitimately just die. Of course, my adrenaline was super crazy and high. I didn't know what to do, but I just sat there for a little bit, and there wasn't even traffic at this point of night. It was like 12:30 at night. Luckily, a car stopped and this guy got out and he just put his hazard lights on to, warn like other cars coming to slow down. At the end, I asked him what his name was. Like he helped me call the police and everything. And he was like, Angel. And I thought that was like pretty interesting because I mean, the whole thing just felt like I was being protected. Truly, as soon as I got out of the car, I went how far off I was hanging off of this cliff. I looked down and there's just this paper that says, Jesus loves you so much. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And then I've got Angel over here protecting me. Like, it was insane. So luckily the cops came, the tow truck came. I got it fixed. Insurance covered some of it too. And they covered most of it actually. That was really traumatic, like super scary. I started praying every single time that I got in the car, like, please just get me there in one piece. That's why I got the Subaru Forester because it has super high safety ratings. It's super reliable and I just needed that safety and that grounding and that feeling. That's kind of the way that I feel about the job that I have right now. It's like the music industry, it's a huge risk to take. Every year you see more news headlines about like how Spotify isn't paying artists anymore with like less than 1,000 streams. I've never gotten over 1,000 streams on one song. I've been putting music out every single year since 2018, except for 2020, just about every single year. Sometimes it feels like there's just like, what am I doing this for? I want it to be my career. And when I was playing shows every single weekend, I was making money from music. But now that I've been in this limbo time, I'm like taking time off to write, it was like I'm just investing in myself with a hope and a dream that it'll turn into something. That's what's really inspiring about songwriters because when they're writing, they don't see anything until the song blows up. They don't get paid for writing in sessions. I watched Beyonce's acceptance speech and a lot of artists get up there and they're like, I thank God. It really is like to play music. I don't, you may have your own thoughts and judgments about Beyonce, but a lot of artists will get up there and thank God because there's no way that I could ever see myself getting to the top or having the success that I've even had in this life. up until this point and the transformations that I've had to get me as far as I've come without something greater than myself. I guess that's where the wellness comes in. You know, it's the surrender, it's the faith. One thing you might not know about the Grammys is that there's a ton of genres. There's so many genres that you can actually win awards for, and there's the awards ceremony, which goes on for hours before the actual awards show, which is the televised thing. And there's so many different genres. And I think that, and a lot of people are really upset because they're like, well, you can't just come in and do this. But, you know, that's what's really intimidating. Also, I remember thinking, like, when I first started putting my songs out there, that in my mind, I heard all of these different instruments and stuff, and I had no idea how it was going to make the record sound like what I heard, but I didn't know anything about production at that point. I didn't know anything about recording. You know, these are all things that I've just learned. I've taught myself. I've joined different groups online. People want to put you in a box for sure. To even be considered for a Grammy, you have to know what genre you're in. And I think when you're in classical or you write music for films or you're a jazz singer, maybe it's a little bit easier to say where you fall into things. When I first started performing, everyone called me a folk artist, and I never listened to folk music. I never considered myself a folk artist. And then I got a band, and then we were a punk band because all we knew was to play loud and to play hard. I guess that's why I've put out rock music in the past few years, because my first instrument was a guitar. Rock music is guitar based. I remember asking my music mentor, Chris Kapika, like, what makes a country song? What makes a country record? And he said, well, it's mostly, it's a little bit the lyrics, but also the instrumentation. You might use like pedal guitar, like steel guitar, banjo, that sort of thing. My music's a little bit country, but then there's definitely like the songwriting element to country music. Even Casey Musgraves, who dabbles in both pop and country, got a lot of heat for creating non-traditional country music. So it's definitely interesting to see how the award show evolves, because at the end of the day, it is a popularity contest. And I guess that's why part of me like doesn't care about winning a Grammy. But it's also like one of those things where you want to be recognized for your song, for your music. The takeaway here today is that the artist path it can be super difficult. There's a lot of things that are working against you, and that's where like the wellness comes in. It's that love and the devotion to something that makes you feel connected to God or to source. That's what music does for me, and that's why I want to share it with people. It's not about winning a Grammy, although that would be probably so much fun and so cool. It's just about showing up. It's showing up for your craft, showing up for your podcast, for your marketing, for yourself, showing up for yourself. I hope you learned something from this episode today. At the very least, I hope you feel a little bit inspired to trust in your path and trust in the things that you actively choose to be devoted to, whether that's music or singing or wellness, taking some time for yourself. If you got something out of this episode today, please like, subscribe, save, share it with a friend. Maybe you know an artist that is going through the thought process of like, do I keep doing my music? Do I not? Share this episode with them, because we all have dreams when we're first starting to put ourselves out there, or maybe like 4 or 5 years in, when things start to be exciting, we feel and see the momentum and the progress that we're making, and we allow ourselves to dream bigger. But then like things start to get a little hard, and you have to just come back to your why of why are you doing it? How does it make you feel? How can you help other people through the way that it makes you feel? So be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next week. Stay healthy, wealthy, and wise. Bye.